Good evening. How's everybody?
It looks like they're counting down the days to the end of school.
I can't believe that. No,
Hmm.
everybody. We
Yep.
had we had faculty meeting today at Gardner Webb, and the new senior the new senior pastor got up to the university, whatever his title is now. Tracy used to be senior, I guess VP for something or another, but he was talking about it being over with, and I said, "No, we still got 2 more weeks. I don't understand what this over with is. How you finish is how you'll start next year. You always got to remember that in school administration. If you let them go, if you let them go at the end of the year, then that's how they'll want to start next year. So you got to stay vigilant to the end. With that said, tonight's going to be our last class. Of course, I'd already told you that we'll finish up tonight. This is week 14, and I had it on the schedule. We'll just do sexual harassment quickly at the end tonight. I normally always schedule that last week in case we miss or something goes wrong. We always have an extra time. I don't like to. I always like to have a plan B. So hopefully we'll get through tonight. I think everybody's doing well. Monitor your points under my grades. You know how many points it takes. Let me share my screen right quick, and we're going to get to Dr. Sane, who's going to be our presenter this evening. Let me move this out of the way. Why'd that jump up top? I don't know. So, let me see if I can get here. And so under my grades right here, it'll tell you where you are, and under course overview, you can simply compare that to the grading scale here. Pretty simple. And so I don't think anybody's got any problem with their points. If you do, get in touch with me. If you don't have at least 3,000, we're gonna have problems. So probably have to do an incomplete. So I don't think there's anybody in this group. Well, I know there isn't. So, but I think we're good. But monitor that. Make sure you try to get both of your evidences knocked out before summer. I will, by the way, my shell will stay open. I'll grade work every day. You got 2 weeks till grades are officially due, I think Tuesday, maybe. So you got like 13 days. Continue to work. I'll continue to grade. We'll continue to feedback. We just won't meet next week so that you'll have plenty of time to get everything in if at all possible. So you got about 2 weeks to get everything done. Make sure you follow it up. If you're working on the cap, put them in. I'll continue to work with you on your cap. Remembering that the more of the cap you get done before classes start back the 15th, yes, you can go on to cap 3 and 4. Just keep right on rolling. Don't slow down now. The more of the cap you can get done, the less you got to do this summer. And remember, you got to do the SIOP, finish up your competency folio. All that stuff's got to be done this summer. And we have to be done the last week in July so that we can say we graduated you before August 1st so that you're eligible for a job in the fall. Lisa, you got a question?
Yes. Do you know when the task will be up for the SIOP? Since I'm done with the cap, will I have to
I've
wait
got,
until?
if you'll look in our shell, let me show you.
Because I would like to go ahead and start that.
Yep. So if you'll look under, and just because we always have somebody who asks that, and thank you for the prompt. This was going to be my close tonight. You stole my thunder. Here's my gift to all of you. Under Zoom session 14, here is the SIOP final evidence template. I have made you a template. Please remember that the SIOP is not new work. You don't have to involve anybody but yourself. All you have to do is go to the places that I direct you to in this template and pull that information. And then put some linking narrative with it. Now, don't get it all. Don't get stuff that you don't need. Try to keep yourself to around 80 pages. Don't turn in 180. But as you will see in this template, again, I was going to do the great reveal at the end tonight. Here it comes. It'll take a second to open up. All right. You notice your name here. Here's the format template. All right. So first thing, background. You got to, yellow is do something here. Background information, description, and setting. You will find that in skip task 1, prompt 1. Copy and paste it right there. Right here for the prompt. Here's where you're gonna get this stuff. It tells you right here. Everything it asks you to do, I tell you where you will find it. Now, don't copy everything. Copy specifically what they're asking you for.
Hold on 1 second. Let me see what he's saying.
And if
Hold on.
you do that, it will you'll end up with 60 to 80 pages. If you just copy the whole section, the whole task, you'll have 180, and then they'll send it back and make you cut it down. So you might as well do it right the first time. But I'm telling you exactly where the stuff is, right all the way through right here. And don't do a perk chart. Just do the graphic organizers. That's what we work on right here. Put them all together. If you remember, that's why I had you do the same one every time. So all you got to do is stack them together. And then you do that. And so that's it. So you can start on that anytime. But again, that's under week 14 for tonight. It's a great question. Other questions that you have, we can do questions again at the end. Do we have any good news? Anybody interviewed for a job? Talk to anybody for a job? Kelly, I'm looking at you.
I did too.
And Alicia did too. All right, Kelly, go first. Tell us what your deal is.
I had a round 1 at a local high school Friday, got a call back about an hour later for round 2. They had 60 applicants. They narrowed it down to 20 for round 1. And then round 2 was yesterday. I think they narrowed it down from 20 to 7 or so. And I got a call this afternoon offering a position. So, and then I had another interview Monday that I thought went horrible. And my high school principal said that I should be waiting for a phone call from them as well. So I don't know what I'm going to do.
So they offered it to you. They offered you.
Yes.
Oh, okay. I missed that. Congratulations.
It's on the DL until the school board meets next week.
But see, that's wonderful. Now, Kelly, the reason why I wanted to highlight Kelly, no, I want to highlight all of them, but Kelly, they threw a little curveball on the interview process for Kelly. It's the same stuff. They just changed the order. So what they did, they started with the principal interview where you had to go in and know your stuff and brought the team in and just wore you out. And then they switched it up. So the interviews, I don't care how you do them, they're all going to be the same 4 kind, but they may switch it up on you like that. But Kelly was ready. So obviously.
They asked me about what I felt some improvements I could help make. And so I went home this weekend and I already did research on their report card, but I did more research, and I actually created an action plan with teacher led, talking about, because they do have a low school climate according to their survey. So I came in ready because he asked me the exact same question again in front of the entire panel. And I said, oh, by the way, I've done some reflecting, and I pulled it out of my portfolio. And I said, here, I've got a great plan to get started. And they were very impressed.
Yes. And so if you'll remember the 5 things that you must bring, that's one of the 5 is in that vein is the strategic plan or an action plan. That's exactly right. Remember, go back to the document in the interviewing materials, and it says 5 things you must bring to an interview. That's one of them. See, folks, there's nothing new under the sun. You just, if you're prepared and you know what they're going to be asking you, and you're paying attention, you look at their report card, you do the TWC work, when you walk in, I'm telling you, you'll be ahead of 95% of the other applicants. And I know you're great because you've been here, not because of me, but Gardner Webb don't let dummies in. So I know that you had the goods when you came. If you remember the soft folk rock group America, Oz never did give nothing to the Tin Man that he didn't already have. Obviously, y'all are elite or you wouldn't be here. And then if you know what you're doing, on top of that, I'm telling you, it will happen for you. One of the
The
folks
amount of
on
times I said, I stick to the policy. I think I said that about 50 times and they smiled every time. They said,
Every
what do you do about
time.
discipline? I said, I go by the student handbook and that is my Bible.
I said the same thing.
Alicia, how'd it go? What did you do, Andrew, Alicia?
So my interview compared to Kelly's, because we've already talked about it, was a piece of cake. So basically I interviewed for a middle school position principal at a charter school. And it was 7 people on the panel. It was the superintendent already on the first one, the
Mm-hmm.
high school principal, the middle school principal, and it was like a teacher from 6th grade, from 7th, 8th, and 9th there. So when I walked into the school, they already made me feel like I was at home. That was a plus. I got there 30 minutes early. So then I walked up and they just started like rolling off the questions. They asked me about discipline. Basically I said due process, to be fair and to go by the policies and the code of conduct. I had to actually dig into like the APSL because they asked me how would I conduct the PLC meeting, and I basically went through that, talked about identifying the pressing need, and basically talked about the action plan. So that was another thing. They asked me, what did I know? What was the difference between a charter school and a traditional school? I knew that because I had already done research. They was shocked. They asked me, what did I know about the school? I was able to give them like the report card data, the mission, the vision. Like that was really like a wowzer because they was like, wow, she really know the mission, vision, because I had already done my research. And I had to explain how did I handle a discipline situation. I actually did that in my internship. So I was able to go through the steps of that. They asked me about employee morale. And then the question that I asked at the end was what was something they wanted to new to bring to the school, and they said MTSS. And so that was something that they want to like start at the school. And then when the superintendent was like, and I've already noticed that on your resume, you have been on the MTSS team and also the chair of MTSS. So that was a plus. But it was more so informal than formal. So my interview compared to Kelly's was a piece of cake because I didn't have to do all of it. It was just basically questions coming back to back, and it was stuff that I knew.
Yeah. So what they did there was they put three of the different types together. They did kind of the group, the principal, and the superintendent all at once.
So it was just
Again,
one. I don't have another interview. That was just it.
Yeah, that's
one
what I mean.
interview.
They did 2, 3, and 4 all at one time. That's exactly. You shouldn't have another one either. So that's how that works. But regardless of how they switch them up or how many you have, if you'll take each one of them and work through what you got to know for each of those types of interviews, and then be able to adapt to whatever they throw at you, which one it is, and if you know there's a comfort level that comes with you if you know this stuff that shines through in your interview. That's the trick, is that you're not just stabbing around in the dark hoping that you're answering something close to what you're able to directly answer. You know what they're pretty much going to ask before they ask. And so Sandra, you went to a job fair on Saturday. How'd that go?
I went to a job fair with Charlotte Mecklenburg Schools. They had all of the schools there, middle, elementary, high. And what my intention was to actually see if they had that whole recruitment piece for, the school administration, but they did not. So what I ended up doing was talking with some of my friends. I went around to some of the schools I had, been affiliated with in terms of, doing things like Camp CMS and stuff like that. So I just kind of went around and started talking to people and, finding some of my people with CTE. And I did more socializing than anything else.
That's not a bad thing. No, CMS does an applicant pool. Is the way that they do theirs. They don't do job fairs on those or didn't used to. And so it sounds like they're still the same way. They do applicant.
Yeah, they said I had to go into the principal pool. That is online correct. And go through the leadership thing and fill that all that out. So,
yeah, you got to go through the applicant pool process there. But
I'm still hopeful. I had fun though.
Well, that was good. That was good.
I felt important when I walked in the door.
Well, that's part of it. You got to feel like you belong. That's exactly right. You got to feel like you belong. Now, there's a person on the screen tonight, and I'm not going to call her name because she said that she referenced her age and that she was older, and it was, how do you remember this stuff? And I reminded her that nobody's older than me. And I've been afflicted with can't remember stuff for a long time. That the notion here is you got to write it down as you get older. I used to carry a little small pad. You see, my pad keeps getting bigger and bigger. You got to write it down. But again, my point in that is, more than you think you do. And when you sat down and review this stuff, I know what y'all went through last semester. I watched you. I was there with you on Thursday nights. I watched y'all go through. I know what you've been through this semester. I know what kind of academic credentials you had to be in the program. None of you are dummies. It's not like you don't know. And if you feel a part and you know that you don't have to be arrogant, but it will bring a calmness to you when you interview, and you'll be fine. You know more than you think you do, and you will remember more than you think you will. Because you know it. It's not just something that you memorized. You have lived this. Why do you think we had you coming and going to and froing? So, because if I tell you, you probably won't remember, but if you went and did it, or if you interviewed, or you talked to somebody, or you've done the work, you've earned it. You're not, the biggest problem in life with people is what's known as imposter syndrome. That they really don't have, they think they're an imposter. Look, you're not. Y'all are the real deal. You wouldn't be here if you weren't. And you certainly wouldn't have survived this semester with me if you weren't. I can tell you that. So y'all are the real deal. Go out there and get the jobs that you deserve, that you've worked hard for. Nobody's worked harder than you. Nobody has worked harder than you. That's one thing. Now you can say Dale's the dumbest person I ever met, but now nobody has worked harder than you through their preparation program. I will tell you that hands down, and everybody will acknowledge that. And so that's it. Kelly said she brought notes with her to both interviews, and they appreciated it. Take your little notebook with you. Write stuff down. Especially if they ask multi-part questions, jot notes down, those kinds of things. Be planned and prepared. Be real. That's right. And Alicia said, be real, be yourself. Yeah. I mean, somebody said the other day that age is just a number. Yeah, it represents how old you are. And you can't change that, and nor should you want to. And if you need to write stuff down, there's no shame in that. Young people need to write stuff down. I write stuff down all the time. That's the notion. All right. Dr. Sain is ready to go. He's made you a wonderful PowerPoint. And so he's going to share his screen and go.
Yep. And while I'm doing that, just so y'all know, if any of you are close to Lincoln County, they will be posting all of their AP positions soon. And if you need a good reference, and you let me know, because I can certainly give you one. Because here's the thing, based off of some of the stuff that I've showed you, you'd be prepared to walk into a Lincoln County school right now and be successful. So just keep me posted. If you live around that area, it's about 45 minutes west of Charlotte. So just keep an eye out for it, because they've got some good schools there. So let's dive into budgets. And I told Dr. Lamb before we started tonight that I am not the expert at school budgets and accounting. I am, but I was tasked with supporting our principals in Lincoln County with making sure that they could manage a budget. So I just want you to know that budgets always scared me a little bit. But going back to what we've been talking about, as long as you follow the manual, as long as you follow the procedures and the protocols, we'll be in good shape. So this is kind of just a presentation, kind of a budget 101 about you as a future principal or an administrator as a principal, and how you oversee spending, accounting, and management. So we'll dive right in just for the sake of time. But as Dr. Lamb has referenced throughout this semester, you know, there are four big sources of money that you'll deal with. You'll deal with federal, which are your title funds, your grants, your federal grants, your federal aid programs, the state budget based off of taxes, you know, property taxes, income taxes, your local budgets, which include sales taxes, and then school funds, which are your grants, your fundraisers, you know, your partnerships where you get money, your booster clubs or your student club organizations where you get money for the school. So those are the four big pockets of money that you're going to be dealing with as a principal. Now, in most districts that I have experienced, and I know in Dr. Lamb's experience, he's probably going to have different scenarios, but in most cases, the first, second, and third sources of funding, the district pretty much laid out, here's what you have, here's what you'll spend it on, so to speak. Where we gave a lot of autonomy to principals, you know, in my experience, both in Kannapolis and Lincoln, was in number 4 with school funds. So when we're talking tonight, all of these practices are good for dealing with any type of money, but specifically we're going to be talking about honing in on the school funds piece. And again, Dr. Lamb's going to chime in when I miss anything that is super important. So what I've done is I've taken some of the biggest, or the what I think are the most important policies, and then kind of tying that into some advice. And so the first one is the powers and duties of principals, and right there, the principal shall maintain the school's budget, and that's the biggest one. You shall maintain it. So when I talk about budgets, it's all, you know, there's a lot of people who have their hands on the pot in school systems. You have their financial department at the central office, you have your financial secretaries at the school, but one of the worst things that we can do is overtrust our financial secretaries or overtrust people who actually deal with the money. As a principal, you've got to keep your eyes on it at all times. And so the best way to do that, the best way to begin that process is that Dr. Lamb has said this until he's blue in the face. So I hope you all remember this, is that your budgets should reflect or should be driven by your school improvement plan, specifically the academic needs of students. All other things are secondary. That's why we're in school. And your money flow should reflect that. Now there are going to be things throughout throughout the year that come up. You know, paper seems to be always the biggest one. Schools had to buy, had to purchase more paper, but you can also tie that to academics. I mean, if kids don't have paper, we can't teach. If teachers don't have paper, we can't teach. And just a side note, if you're, when you become a principal and an assistant, or assistant principal and principal, if your teachers need paper, if they need copy money, try to find ways to give that to them. That's just one barrier that we can eliminate. If teachers need paper, give them paper. You probably have worked for principals or schools that don't have paper, and you have to manage it. When we talk about school climate, it kind of ties back into that. If teachers don't have access to paper and copies, your climate's probably not the best that it could be. That was just a little sidebar. But when we're talking about budget planning, a team approach is the best way to do this. And I put who should be on that team, or just some suggestions that I said. These were kind of our minimum expectations, and they might not necessarily have to be on a team, but we should be talking to these individuals and getting their input on the budget. I've highlighted some there: the instructional coaches, the teachers' assistants, and the central office staff. When you're looking for things that are going to drive student achievement, those people in your buildings know the most. The instructional coaches, just because their boots are on the ground with teachers and they can give you a summary of what the school needs. But some of the hardest working people in our buildings are the teacher assistants or the paraprofessionals that are working with kids, and getting very little pay for it. And this is especially at the elementary level. Ask a teacher assistant what the building needs, because they have a good idea of what they do, because they're working with small groups. They're working with kids, all throughout the day. And then central office staff. That's just always a good partner to have. They're going to tell you what the district initiatives are, so that you can also align your spending with their initiatives as well. Anybody just curious, anybody at your schools have anybody else on these committees, these budget committees that I'm forgetting? All right. Okay, so here's what here is just kind of some recommended advice from me, but meet regularly with the school improvement team to ensure the budget reflects the academic and instructional priorities of the school. A lot of times I would walk into school improvement meetings and the budget would not be referenced. I think that it's best practice that budget be brought up at every one of the monthly SIT meetings. You know, your school might have more. I just think it's best practice to keep money on the table, because on the flip side of everything that I'm telling you tonight, you're also kind of covering your rear, so to speak, because anytime we stop talking about money, there's always going to be someone that assumes you're not talking about it because you're hiding it, right? You know, money is kind of that necessary evil, and people, if it's not out on the table and we're not talking about what we're doing with it, then people start talking, grade levels start talking, well, he gave this to them or she gave that to them, she's not giving us any for our grade level, so to speak. So if you keep the money conversation on the table, especially at those SIT teams meetings, again, you can kind of control that conversation, so to speak, and it also helps your school climate. But always have current knowledge of the school's budget when discussing possible academic or instructional purchases. I put this there because you don't know how many times I have had principals come to me and say, listen, I thought I had this much money. I went and talked to a grade level about buying this, and I told them we could buy it. And guess what? We don't have that much money. What can you do for me? And the answer I always gave back was nothing. You're going to have to go back and tell them you don't have the money. So again, just always know. I had a running when I was a principal, and luckily when I was an assistant principal, my principal gave me access. I had that Excel spreadsheet up everywhere I went, so I knew how much money we always had. There's that because I never promise or talk about materials that are out of your budget's limits. Even if it's a wish list, you just don't want to set that, because when you start talking about it, people get their hopes up. And then when you can't buy it, then going back to morale, I mean, talk about a bummer. Oh, here's this great resource. People start doing research. And then you come back to the table and you say, sorry, we can't get that this year. That's not good, just in general. So the last thing there, collaborate with your booster clubs or organizations connected to the school to ensure purchases are made in the best interest of school and of the school. And what I mean by that is, first of all, you should be, and I'm going to, Dr. Lamb can correct me here. In Lincoln County, principals had oversight of clubs and organizations. High schools, the athletic boosters, it got a little bit hairy, but we had a district, our HR director or head athletic director had oversight over those. But again, the conversations that you want to have there is that you're, again, making sure that the purchases are aligned with the organization's improvement goals or the organization's goals, but more importantly, is it going to improve your overall school? So just keep that in mind. As the principal, you should always have conversations with anyone who's raising money in your buildings. Okay, because if a club or if a person misuses funds, guess who the first person they're going to come to? Not that person, it's going to be you. Okay. Anything you want to add there, Dr. Lamb?
Failure to maintain fiscal control.
Yeah.
Even if you didn't steal it, even if you didn't know that they were wasting it or stealing it, if under the auspices of the school, and that's one of the takeaways that I send y'all, it doesn't matter who you delegate the activity to. You can delegate the activity, but not the responsibility for fundraising. I mean, your district will hold you accountable. And back to one of the things Dr. Sane said to kick off tonight, you want a great bookkeeper, but you can't just completely trust them. A principal friend of mine in Charlotte was involved in a freak accident the weekend before school opened. She was an elementary principal and did one of those, we're going to run to the beach right quick, before school starts, because we won't get a break until Christmas. Got down there and walked out on the beach. The wave came and hit her and broke both of her hips, broke both of her legs, hips, and she was laid up in the hospital for a long, long time. Not an old woman. I mean, she's still a fairly young woman, but just one of those freak things that happened. And while she was laid up in recuperating all that time and stayed in the hospital and then in the rehab hospital and then at home in the bed, I mean, she didn't come back to work for months. and the financial secretary would just come by and drop off, and she'd just sign all the checks from home. And then after Christmas, the financial secretary didn't come back and had absconded with all the money from everywhere. And that principal was no longer that principal.
Yeah.
Your bookkeeper makes off with the money, you're responsible. Your PTO makes off with the money, that's responsible. Your chorus out selling stuff and don't deliver whatever they sold, you're responsible. I had that one to happen. All the above have happened. And so you got to understand that it comes back to you. And this notion, well, we don't have to worry about fundraising. Our PTA does it. Yes, you do. If there's fundraising, I don't care who's doing it, you're responsible for it. You better know that. So that better be part of what your plan is. And I want to say something too. Jackie's with us tonight. Jackie wrote in one of her responses today, as a matter of fact, about discovering money that they didn't know they had at her school. And I think I said this last week, and I know I said it last night's class. One of the things that I used to have to talk to principals about is waiting until the end of the year and then spending large amounts of money. And the kids that money was allotted for this year didn't get any benefit from it.
Right.
It goes to the book room or somewhere and it's lost or stolen, or we didn't get any value out of that. So when Dr. Sane was talking about, faculty morale, it doesn't look good when you told people all year long, we don't have the money for that. And then all of a sudden stuff starts showing up the last month of school. That kind of destroys your credibility as a financial manager and as a leader of that building. There's nothing worse for morale than, well, he told me all year long we didn't have any money, and now that, a truck's coming every few minutes unloading stuff. Well, it's too late now for that. Well, that won't do me any good on this year's test scores.
Mm-hmm.
Not a good look.
Yeah.
Not a good look. Not knowing your balances or not communicating, or somebody at the central office not communicating with you that you've got money, and then all of a sudden, no, you got to spend this week. I had that happen in one of the districts that I worked in, and we had to have a critical conversation. Me and the director of that area was actually the CTE director. We had to have a critical conversation. And I started out with one of us is going to have to carry a whipping home. I'm betting it won't be me. And that got his attention, and that never happened to me again. But he threw me under the bus and then backed over me with my faculty. You don't do that but one time.
Yep.
Jackie just said that's exactly. I mean, it's a bad look. It makes you look like Bozo the Clown. That I can't think of it. In many ways, that's worse than spending money you don't have in terms of faculty morale, and you look like the village idiot.
Yeah.
So don't. If there's one thing I could tell you is make sure you're watching your bookkeeper, but number two, make sure that you're not telling people no all year, and then the trucks start rolling in, in May. Boy, that makes teachers madder than fire.
I called it, Dr. Lamb, the 401k effect.
Yes.
School budgets are not meant to be saved. They're meant to be spent.
That's correct. They're for the kids that are in your building this year.
Yes. And one of the things that would irk me the most is I would go to a principal in March and all of their money would still be sitting there. And what if there's an emergency? Well, we don't in schools, that we can't have that mentality. That money is there to support kids on day one, not day 120. So again, we're not dealing with retirements. We're not dealing with savings accounts, because more than likely you're going to get money back. Might not be the same amount next year, but you get to start over. So spend your money when you get it. Spend it wisely. Spend it through your plan. You can have kind of if you do all the planning over the summer, you can kind of say we're going to spend this much here, but do not hold on to all of it. And a lot of people say, oh, well, they might cut deals on these instructional resources. Trust me, I work for Curriculum Associates now. We don't cut deals. They don't cut deals. You might get a bulk sale every now and again, but don't wait to buy things before things you think are going to go on sale. It just doesn't happen that way. Spend the money when you have it.
Yeah, and tangential to that is back to your plan. Make sure, like Dr. Singh said, every time you have a school improvement team, every time that you talk about what your plan is. We're going to spend this much here. We're going to spend that much there. We're going to spend it all the way through. And don't, don't say, well, we're looking for a bargain. No, what, but to his point, it's an emergency right now. I mean, that's the emergency, is we got to do better right now. We'll worry about next year. But one of the things that I would do, and I'll just tell you, I'm an awful person. Y'all already figured that out. But when principals would save their money or not spend it or come to the end of the year and just waste it at the end of the year, we just made sure that wasn't in the budget for them the next year.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
I can't trust you to spend this wisely. I can't trust you to spend it at all. So I won't give you that option. So if you come up to the end of the year and you've got 60,000 left over, I'll just make sure you don't have that 60,000 in your budget next year. And again, if you spend it, whatever you spend at the 1st of April, you're not getting that back either, because you didn't plan effectively. You didn't have a plan. You were flying by the seat of your pants, and hope is not a plan. So those are some things. Now, back to his original slide, state and federal funds. Sometimes districts will split those into two things. State funds and federal, they'll say, this is how much money you have, and this is how many positions you have. And they'll categorize them in terms of a allotment, teacher allotment. And so don't be the idiot who says, we're not getting all of our state or federal money because we're just getting this little bit right here. Understand that 85% of each of those funds, federal and state, go to pay salaries. Don't be that idiot that calls up your supervisor, me, or Dr. Sane, and says, we didn't get all our money this year. We only got 15% of it. You got your positions, didn't you? Well, yeah. Well, that's where the rest of it went. You got to be smart enough to know that. If your district separates them out, you look at how many personnel you got and then how much money you got. You got to be smart enough. So if you're the guy that calls me up and says that, then I know that I can't trust you on money because you can't figure things out. Yeah. Again, that's another one of those IQ tests. So you will have, for federal and state money, you will have the actual, some account money, some code money, but you will also have an allotment sheet of the number of personnel. And so you got to know that you don't get 100% of your state and federal money. You get 15% of it. That's all you get. And the other 85 goes to pay for that personnel on your allotment sheet. So make sure that you know that as well. Don't be the dumb person that asks that dumb question, because then people don't have any faith in your fiscal management. Yeah. All right, I'm through my rant.
Well, no, you just brought up a good point that I could rant about. Is don't mistrust the central office. They get audited just like you do. They're not hoodooing anybody. They're giving you the money that you deserve. And so there's so many things you've learned in this course alone. There are so many things that a principal has to do. So many things that we have to worry about. Worrying about whether somebody at the central office gave $200 more to another school, or worrying about if you've got exactly what you should have, is not worth your time. And I always said, you get your budget and you run with it. And it's a reality that we can't fix. There are going to be years you're going to take a budget cut. But at the end of the day, good teaching replaces a lot of money. So we can still meet our instructional goals. We can't get caught up in the we don't have money, we don't have money. We've just, here's what it is. Let's plan with what we have and let's get through the year successfully. So just a side note there. I just wanted to bring this up because this is such a good discussion board activity. You going and talking to your principal about the 5 most important steps in the school budgeting process for your schools. Anybody have anything that they just want to share that they found either alarming or just something that they didn't know about, or anything that doesn't necessarily align with what we've talked about? I'm just curious if any of your principals said something that was new.
We had some really good responses to that. And I could point a couple out, but for the sake of time, I won't. But here's the thing that I always say in my response back. I do read these things, but it's always heartening to me when they're able to rattle them off. That means they've got a plan. That means your principal has a plan. When they stumble and mumble and think and have to scratch, their head and other parts of their body, that means they don't have a plan. So it's it's not unimportant, but it's not, the important piece there is that they have 5 steps, that they have a plan. What they're all going to pretty much fall in the same category, about 6 or 8 or 10, but that they can tell you they've got a plan for how they develop their budget process and what their priorities are in that. That's a good thing. And that's what you need to understand about that when you are in that role, is you need to have a plan.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a plan, it's probably not going to work out real well for you.
Nope. So speaking of plans, let's go to the policy about accounting systems. And each local school administrative unit shall establish and maintain an accounting system to show assets, liabilities, equities, revenues, and expenditures. So I'm going to tell you a little. So because, like I said at the beginning, I really don't talk school budgets well. So when I was a principal, we had that official budget or a spreadsheet that our district gave, that official accounting system. I didn't really understand it, so I had my financial secretary make kind of a sub tab where she put some of those things in layman's terms for me. She showed me how it connected. But again, that system worked for me so that I could pull up that spreadsheet when I needed to, but then I could do a quick glance of what we had and where we stood with kind of a layman's terms spreadsheet. Now, that is all dependent upon the financial secretary that you are blessed with when you enter a school. I had a really good one. She'd been there for 27 years. She became my best friend. Really, she became my best friend. You guys will find out that the principal's chair is a lonely chair, and the financial secretary is usually the only one that's going to be your advocate. So, or be your number one cheerleader. Again, just there's all different ways you can support your own management of the system. But so let's talk about this. The person designated in your school building to maintain the accounting system should become your best friend. That's usually going to be your school financial secretary. But again, that is somebody designated to maintain the system. You still oversee the system. All right. Once you designate somebody, the absolute minimum that you meet with that person is weekly. And I know that sounds like a lot, but I always met with mine Friday afternoon. I wanted to know where we ended the week with money. And you would be surprised at how often that changes, how those monies change and come in and out, how often the district office says, okay, the state needs this back, or the state gave us this. So again, weekly, in my opinion, would be the minimum. Again, going back to establish a strong relationship with your district's financial department, establish consistent communication with them to ensure that budgets and accounting are aligned with the district's plans, and then all the protocols that they have. If you're a new administrator or new at a school, that communication should be more frequent. Again, you don't want to make these people your enemy. You don't want to mistrust them because district finance departments, and I know Dr. Lamb can speak to this, the red tape that they have to go through, the auditing that they have to go through is above anything that we experience at the school level. So just keep that in mind. Daily deposits. How many of you know someone or have been someone who's kept money in your desk drawer overnight? I will admit that I really was that. Oh, it's just $5. It's amazing how much headache that $5 can cause for a principal. So You shall deposit collections and receipts daily. And here's how you do that. Ensure that your financial secretaries or the person over your accounting system at your school, your budget, trains and supports teachers for handling money. One of the biggest things that I think we do wrong is we just do that in the beginning of the year. It should be continuous. There should be reminders at every staff meeting. There should be reminders via email. You should oversee that training and support. Teachers must be held accountable when those procedures or protocols are not followed. You don't know how many times we've had missing money, and a principal called me and said, well, I've kind of known that they've been doing this for quite some time. And my first response is, well, why the hell are you just now calling me? Right? I mean, we have to hold people accountable if they're not following these procedures and protocols. Establish communications procedures for the financial secretary to immediately make you aware of when there is money collection inconsistencies. Because again, all it takes is $20 missing, and then the rumors get started, and then you look like you cannot manage the people in your building and the money that's going through it. And that, again, that just going back to what Dr. Lamb said, just money and morale have a really tight relationship.
Yep.
Think about us at home. When we get a little extra bonus or when we get a little extra money, we get happy. And when schools don't have it, or when we think we've mismanaged it, morale goes down the tubes.
We had a question from Sandra as we move from slide.
Yep.
Yeah, a quick question, because I was making notes while he was talking. So my understanding for the financial secretary is that they handle all of the transactions. They do the processing, but the principal is ultimately held accountable. Is that what I'm
That
understanding?
is correct.
So they do all of they're kind of like the CPA.
Yep.
Okay.
But you got to be watching them, because in the end, it's not on them. It is not on them. If the money's missing or misspent, it's not. If a purchase is made and then later on it said, well, you couldn't use that account for that, we're denying this PO at the central office, that would come back to you. Even
Okay.
if your secretary said, yeah, you can do that. No, you're supposed to know. You got to watch them.
Okay.
And you want a good relationship with them, but in the end, you got to trust but verify. And so in the chat, Kim was talking about, they just had a meeting in her district that they had to start doing daily deposits. That law has been on the books for 25 years, folks. Now what that means is somebody has absconded with the money. That's what that means. And it's probably a large amount.
Which comes to the second part of my question.
That's back to your point, is more than likely the financial secretary is the one that wasn't doing the deposits and was collecting the money up, and either it got taken from her or she took it, one or the other.
And that's the second part of my question, going back to thinking and hearing the girls talk about their new positions and their job offers. If you step into that role, can you be held accountable for mismanagement of a prior administration?
Absolutely. First thing you do when you become a principal is you ask for an audit. Very first thing. So that you know where it is and you can ferret out that there's anything. I became a principal of a school and we owed $200,000. The AP that was in charge of some things, he retired quickly and left town. But first thing I did was ask for audit. Second thing I did was said I'll have to have a new financial secretary, and I moved Miss Sonia out and moved Miss Debbie in, hired her. If you want me to, you want me to pay all this stuff, don't you? We owed Johnson's for the yearbook. We owed the Sheridan for the prom. We owed Pepsi Cola $40,000 from the vending machines. We owed everybody in town money. And if you want me to fix this, then A, I got to have a real accounting of it, and B, I got to have a financial secretary, one that's not just somebody that y'all said was. I mean, pardon my language, but you can paint racing stripes on a turd. That don't make it a race car. It's still just a turd. You can call somebody a financial secretary, but just because you call them that doesn't make them one. That's exactly what I told the superintendent. This is racing stripes. This woman's got no financial training, a high school graduate with no training. It's a wonder to me that you don't owe more than $200,000 to everybody in town.
Yeah.
And so these are things that you must do when you become principal. Yes, I had to work that $200,000 of debt off. I most certainly did.
Yeah. And Dr. Lamb, just to add to that, you guys are entering again education, and when there is a lot of turnover in the financial department. I think that the days of financial secretaries being at schools for 35 plus years are over. Just alone in Lincoln County, we turned over 17 financial secretaries in 31 schools just last school year. So again, it's just the need for training is going to be there for when you get your new financial secretaries, if you get a new one. And just, Sandra, those were great questions, but going back to the audits, I mean, it is required that there is an annual audit, but I'll tell you, I had a PTO that raised a lot of money. We had a lot of clubs and organizations that raised a lot of money in my school. It was a pretty affluent school. So I actually called for an audit 2 times. Our district paid for the audits anytime that you wanted one. If you just needed it, we paid for an independent audit. I actually had 2 during the school year. We did one in October after a big fundraiser, and then we did one in March, and then we had the end of the year one. So again, if you need that affirmation, or if you feel that you need an audit, then call an audit. Just like Dr. Lamb said, you come into a school building, call an audit. And that, a lot of people think, well, if I call an audit, then people are going to think that I'm doing something wrong. And it's actually the reverse. If you call an audit, then that means you want to do something right.
Well,
You just want to make sure you're doing the right thing.
Can you purchase software like
No.
that the school you can't
no. You're not allowed to
do
keep
QuickBooks or anything like that?
No, you can't keep a second set of books. That's RICO. The feds will come get you for racketeering. You cannot keep a second. Let me be clear. You cannot keep a second set of books. No, absolutely not. You cannot keep a second set of books.
Well, I was thinking more in terms of, it being accurate. You put
No,
the numbers, what you
no.
do, and it does.
You got to keep the one that we gave you accurate from the central office. You got to be spending your time on that one. Absolutely do not keep 2 sets of books. Oh no, do not do that. Now, the story that I just told you is absolutely true, but it begs the question, how in the world, if you have to have a yearly audit, did you go into a high school that owed $200,000? Think about the timing of the audit. They had the audit in March. When does the prom occur? When all these bills are due, yearbook, all that stuff is due at the end of the year. Yeah. And so from March, they've been saving things up. And so they were about $60,000 behind in March, but we had a scholarship fund which balanced the books in March. So we were about 60,000 behind. Best I could tell, when the audit was done in March, we were about 60,000 behind, but they let them count the scholarship money. We had a $60,000 endowed scholarship that produced money, to give kids a $500 scholarship. So they were able to do that. But by the time you got to pay for annuals for 3,000 kids, figure that, and you're spending $40,000 or $50,000 on a prom over to Sheridan, that kind of stuff, all the money that they spent over there, and you hadn't sold the first prom ticket yet. You got to put all that money out, and then you owe Pepsi. They just been letting you go all year long, and then at the end of the year, all the money that you were supposed to be paying them, that's how you get $200,000 behind. So the day you walk in, you ask for an audit. And if you're a nickel off, or if you owe a $1, you ask for a new financial secretary. Financial secretary ought not let you get in that kind of mess. They're not really a financial secretary. Somebody just painted racing stripes on them and called them. No. Jackie's got a question.
Well, I was just gonna say, like, how I put in the chat that, so our financial secretary is leaving and she's been there for 10 years, but we have a new principal this year, and they keep having friction because the new principal just, like, she wants to use the P card to buy whatever she wants to buy. And finally she told the financial secretary she needs to stay in her lane, and that was the end. She went and found a new job. And like I said, I am like frightened for what is going to happen because she was what was keeping us like in line.
Yeah.
So lesson for everyone, like your financial secretary is the heart of your school, like operating legally.
Yeah.
Don't make them mad. You can hate everyone else in the school. Don't make that person mad.
But don't make them mad. I tell you, when I was a junior high principal in Charlotte, Todd Kimbrell was mine, and he was absolutely wonderful. We had such a wonderful relationship. I'm gonna tell you what, he was like my oldest child. I still love him to this day. But now he'd just tell me no. We don't, and I'd ask him. I wouldn't just go spend stuff. I'd just, of course, that was the day before debit cards and credit cards, but I just nope, can't afford that. Okay. You got to listen to them. If you're not going to listen to them, then why, then you, as my position coach used to say to me in college, you can listen or you can feel. It's up to you. And so, that was that's what they're there for. Now, one of the things that was said last night, and I've been giving it some thought, and it's probably a really good idea. It'll be a little bit of extra work, and I've been doing it. One of the charities I work with at Gardner Webb, we've been converting to a non-cash economy. We've gotten some new logos and all new brochures. We've gotten a QR code. We've opened up an account where we can Venmo and do all that kind of stuff. And that came up last night. One of the things that will really help you is get out of the cash business. You'll have to do it on tickets at ball games, but you got a ticket, so you're going to do a reconciliation anyway. So that one's not too bad. And Dr. Griffin Jordan, that was with us last night, she said, in Durham, they have a policeman that waits on you and takes you to your car and then follows you and gets out with you to night deposit. And so, for ball game stubs, late at night ball game stubs, but other than that, but Jackie said they're doing sports tickets that are electronic now too. But if there's one thing that I could say to you is get out of the cash business. Don't do any fundraisers that involve any kind of cash or receipts. Now, electronic payments for ice cream and field, absolutely everything should be electronic now. People do it on their phone, Venmo, GoFundMe, QR code. Everybody's got a phone now. People that don't even have a house have a phone. So everybody, we should get out of the cash economy in schools. That'll help a lot. And it'll also, and here was the point that was made last night, it'll relieve a lot of the burden off your financial secretary having to count money and receipt and do all that stuff, where they can actually do and make the job a lot better. And hopefully you won't turn them over as much. Now, if you treat them like dirt, get mad at them and tell them to stay in their lane, they'll leave you. But I'm just thinking about, it'll make it so much easier. Accounting is better, a lot less likely to get in trouble over your accounts, and it'll make life a lot better on your financial secretary if you get out of the cash business. It'll take a lot off teachers as well. It's exactly right, Kristen. You got to get out of the cash business. That would be my number one recommendation in modern times. Now, this is from somebody who's so old. This is absolutely the truth. When I first started teaching school in high school, we had a walk-in vault in the principal's office in the high school. That's how old the building was, where we had a bank vault in the building. I cannot make that up. We had a walk-in bank vault in the building, and you never made deposits. It just went in there, and I don't think they made them maybe once a month, once a quarter, or something like that. To go from that at the beginning of my career to now is everything should be done on somebody's phone now. I mean, that's amazing over 45 years that we've progressed that far, but we need to be in modern times. We need to be in this century.
So no more petty cash accounts?
Absolutely. I would not have petty cash. I wouldn't have a nickel on hand, not one. I'd get completely out of the currency business in terms of cash, petty cash, money for stamps. No, nothing. Absolutely. We would not be running an account, any of those kinds of accounts, because those things, they are so much more work than what they're worth. You don't get any state allotments you don't get any state allotments anymore for office supplies and stamps anyway from the state. You don't get any of that stuff. And so they've already gotten away from that. You used to get an allotment from the state that came with your state money to buy stamps and letterhead and envelopes, things like that. You don't get that anymore anyway. So, and you can requisition from the warehouse if you need ink pens. And so there's not really any need to have petty cash at all. And so I don't think, TikTok economy is trying to do away with cash. Well, in many ways, cash is not real anyway, other than what kelvins of energy if you burned it. I mean, it's not really, it's not really that. And so it's all based on a theoretical principle anyway, just like everything
Yeah.
online is. And
It's a
so,
note. Read it carefully. It says this note.
yep, it's exactly right.
That's what it
It's just
says.
a
on it.
promissory note's all it is.
Yep.
So, but the accounting of it is horrible. And like Jackie said, ADs and coaches for years, huge amounts of money that has to be counted and reconciled. Lord, on Friday Night Football in Charlotte, you just don't understand how many people, and we had to pay them, how many people we had to have involved that were running the ticket booth and doing the money and the accounts and all that. It's a separate, we had to pay a separate person to be in charge of the school volunteers to do all that stuff. We had to pay a faculty member a stipend to do that because it was so much work. You got to get out of that business if you can. You don't need to be in the money business. Back to what Dr. Sane said, we need to be in the business of teaching and learning, educating kids. And Jackie, I think it was Jackie made a good point today. This is the kind of stuff that keeps you out of the classroom and being involved with teaching and learning. I think she made that point today.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's what we're talking about. Anything that you can do so that you can get that takes the burden off you and your financial secretary, lessens your exposure for something fraud or something bad to happen. That's a good thing, so that you can spend your time doing the good stuff, which is teaching and learning.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and Jackie, you're in a good spot. And so here's how you save the day. Okay, so when you get ready to interview a new person, find someone who's mean. Find someone who's going to tell you like it is. And we're not, when you hire somebody in finance, we're not looking for kid people. We're looking for people who can handle money. One of the biggest things that I would have a team when we hired, we actually got 2 financial secretaries, and one was going to kind of do some dual duties. And they're like, so how do you like kids? Who cares how they like kids? That's the one person that's going to make your job easier. Going to hold you accountable, make sure you're not going to go, you're not going to lose your job because $200 is missing. It's just truly. So even though your principal might want someone loose on that team, so when you're interviewing, make sure you're a part of it, and just kindly reminder, we need somebody who's going to keep us in line. We look for the person who is going to have those critical conversations with you.
I already have someone lined up who I know will say no.
Good.
Yeah. You just described the first financial secretary when I was a high school teacher. I never will forget. I told one of the kids to take a purchase order over to Miss McFarland in the office. She was the financial secretary, and the kid said, well, I don't know who Miss McFarland is. And one of the other kids, I think it was one of the McDaniel boys from out here in Bills Creek, said, that old woman that sits up there and smokes and bitches all the time. That's who you want. You want Miss McFarland.
When people say that about your financial secretary,
she was mean and nasty, but that's who you want.
Yeah, that's who you. Yeah, you've done something right when they talk about your financial secretary like that.
Yep.
So moving ahead, just to special funds, and really we're going to focus a lot on fundraisers in just a second. But ensure special funds are used to support the school improvement plan. Communicate to all stakeholders as frequently as possible the purpose of funds and how it will positively impact student achievement. But remember, even though they're a special fund, they still go through the same scrutiny. You should still have the same budgeting and accounting practices in hand. And it should be a team decision in terms of how you spend that money. But again, you are the one at the end of the day that oversees that spending. And I really want to focus on this right here, fundraising. and I think you've heard both Dr. Lamb and I say this, don't do it unless you absolutely have to. Fundraisers will be the bane of your existence. Now, as a principal, I feel like I'm a hypocrite when I say that. We had two. And the only reason I kept them is because that school had been doing them for 25 years, and they became kind of like that was kind of our climate. And those two fundraisers brought in a lot of money. And when I took, so basically what happened is that money was just kind of sat there we put it in a savings account. And this is something that my financial secretary and I did go rounds about. We did have one argument, and it was over spending the fundraising money, because the principal before fundraised so that she would have a big buffer if an emergency came about. My mentality was that is a waste of spending. It is also a lie, because what it was advertised as, we weren't buying it. And so that's the third one. When you do a fundraiser, I think it's critical that you advertise the purpose of it, but shy away from advertising specifically what you want. Going back to that wish list. So for example, don't send home a flyer that says, this fundraiser is going to help us buy 15 science kits. Because what happens if you don't raise enough money to buy 15 science kits? Then the community is going to say, well, where are the 15 science kits? Just say our goal is to increase science, or to improve our STEM lab, and then after the fundraiser's over, report out what the fundraiser was actually able to purchase. My honest opinion is that if you do fundraisers, you need to, as a school, you need to be very open and honest about that. Now, most districts have got into the game of limiting school-wide fundraisers, and I think that is related to, correct me if I'm wrong, Dr. Lamb, a state policy that you can only have two, correct?
That is correct. And they're supposed to not, and they discourage sales. They want you to do community-based events like ball games or, activities like that where you begin, because there is a financial reconciliation. You're selling tickets, that kind of thing. There is a way to do but they want you to get out of the selling like candy and fruit, and you're competing with people in your community, especially if it's perishable stuff. People don't get it, but yeah, you can only do two now. That is correct.
Yep. And then, so again, ensure that money is appropriately collected by teachers, especially, because a lot of times checks and dollar bills are what's given to teachers. And then let boosters or organizations handle most of your fundraisers. That is kind of where, you can still do some fundraisers. This is more prevalent at the high school level or the secondary level. But still, principals should still be a part of any fundraiser that's going on in their building, and overseeing that and making sure that, again, you would be surprised at how many times clubs, especially at the high school level, go out. The last one that we did, and it was a nightmare. They sold Krispy Kreme donuts. We had several people that delivered, several kids. We're talking 13 and 14-year-olds walking around putting donuts on front door steps and just leaving them. Well, of course they're not there, 2 hours later. It's a nightmare. If you do a fundraiser, don't advertise that kids will deliver it to your door. Common sense with fundraisers, because again, they are. And the two that I've had experience, we did penny wars, something you think would be so simple, and they had been doing that for 20 years at that school. And that one penny war, we would bring in like $30,000. I mean, it was a big deal. And then we had a staff basketball game. But just to kind of to tie it all in, the biggest benefit of a staff basketball game is we bought it was new technology at the time, but the Apple Pay or the Apple Swipe or the swipers we did away with money at the basketball game, and we went all electronic, and that was a huge blessing.
Okay, we had a hand up question.
Yeah, quick question. Since you said the thing about the swiper, is it feasible to, and I don't know if this is a good question or not, is it feasible to do those, what do you call them? The shop pay thing where you can put it on your phone and have,
QR
if
code.
you're gonna do an event, you know what I'm talking about? And have them slide their phone, slide
code.
their card in your phone, huh?
There's two things. You can have one that you can have a swiper that plugs into the top of your phone.
Right.
But that's got to be linked to an account. Just like That's the same function as a QR code that I was talking about. That QR code's got to link back to an account. When you swipe that thing, that's not the tricky part's not taking the picture of the QR code or the swiping. You have to have a bank account set up. You have to have some way that actually a financial services company that has a way to get that money into a bank account. And then you have to do the 40, what is it? 403C or what,
501c3, that's a nonprofit.
501C. You got to turn all your paperwork in. The bank has to have that. You have to have the routing. That's the trick. Whether you use a QR code or I would use a QR code rather than the swiper. That would just be me, because that's actually a lot cheaper. And the swiper, you have to pay a monthly access fee. That can get rather expensive. That's why at the gas station, if you pay with a credit card, it costs you more per gallon, or a lot of companies charge you more if you're using credit or using that, because they're paying MasterCard or Visa 5% of their take. And so, again, if you can set up a QR code, and GoFundMe is a little cheaper than that, and some of those, and Venmo and some of those, but there's more to it than just having the swiper on your phone or getting a QR code. There's a whole banking industry behind that and a lot of things that you have to do. But once you set it up one time, but set it up the way that's going to be the cheapest, where you aren't going to be working for the bank where they're getting all the fees off of you and you're getting a big percentage and doing those things.
Okay.
Some districts are setting those up, I understand now.
So Dr. Sane, is the GoFundMe, what Dr. Lamb just said, GoFundMe is an option when you're doing fundraising, and you said 2 fundraisers a year?
You get 2 a year. And if you've got a GoFundMe account, that's charitable. If it's a charity and you got it set up, yes, you can use GoFundMe if your district doesn't have one. I just set up one for a charity in Bowling Springs. Just in the last 2 weeks, I've been working with them to set theirs up.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for those questions, Sandra. The last couple of things I just want to mention. I know we ran over a little bit, but
we're good.
When we talk about property, and furniture and all of that stuff, the district gets money to support buildings. And the last thing that I would do when fundraising or when budgeting your school budget is to spend a ton of money on furniture. And I'm just saying this because it's going to come up. You are going to have teachers that come up to you and say, I want a better kidney table, mine's too old. Or I want one that has pink on it. Or I want these nice fancy chairs that go around it. And at the end of the day, if we're aligning our budgets to and our fundraising efforts to furniture, is that really aligned to our school improvement plan? Are we just doing it because it's trendy or newer? I just put that there. Advocate for your school through the proper channels to ensure your property needs are met. So if you've got things on your property that need to be fixed or repaired, talk to your central office. And then they'll help you, go through, in Lincoln, we had funds that we saved what we had for a rainy day to support that property piece. Be friendly to your facility directors, because I'm going to tell you, they also have had some money in Lincoln County. But the biggest thing is that encourage teachers and students to respect property, report items when the repair needs to be made to ensure longevity, and that is especially specific for playgrounds. If there is something wrong with the playground, which I don't know if you guys know this, but playgrounds are uber expensive. I mean, it is extremely expensive to replace a playground, but it's cheaper to repair a playground, and it ensures the longevity. So just keep those things in mind. But I just think it sends the wrong message when we're fundraising for fancy chairs, or when we're fundraising for new cafeteria tables. We had a principal, I will not name any names, but wanted new cafeteria tables because the color of the seats did not match their school colors. It would be cheaper to change the school colors. Don't waste your money on things like that, because at the end of the day, kids in the cafeteria do not care what color seat they're sitting on.
Question?
Yeah. So how do you manage a group that may want to come in and volunteer to build you a playground for free?
There's
How do you manage
three.
that? Like, say some parent, you know, their child, they care the world about them, and they have all of these connections, and they want to come in and build your playground for free.
No. That's a simple one. That's no. Everything, the building, the ground, and everything on it is the property of the school board. And we don't get into those kinds of things, no. Because there's always expenses that the district has to go through. They have to have personnel out there. They have to have utility locators. I mean, there's a lot of stuff, and the liability, a lot of times the district wouldn't allow you to have some of those things.
Yeah.
And so the answer is no. We don't get involved in that. We will provide what the school needs, and legally that we can, so they come and put in $1 million playground. Next year, it costs us $250,000 to maintain it. Are they going to give us $250,000 in perpetuity? That would be no. So the answer to that is no. We do not enter into those kind of agreements. Lana just asked a question. Capital is the responsibility of the district, not the school. That's what Dr. Sain's trying to tell you. Don't get into capital. Capital is buildings and grounds and maintenance, cafeteria chairs, desk chairs. The district's got to pay for that stuff. And a lot of times they won't give you stuff because it's A, too expensive, and it's a bad look, it's a bad PR, or B, it costs a lot to maintain and keep up. And it's what we call a recurring cost. You know, if somebody says, I want to come put an artificial field on your, well, do you understand that prepping your ground for artificial surface costs more than the artificial surface? Who's going to pay for that? Gardner Webb just spent $500,000 on one, and the maintenance on it is half of that every year.
Yeah.
Who's going to pay for that? And so do not get involved with capital. That's a district issue, not a school issue. That's what he's trying to tell you. Don't get involved in buying chairs or this or that or the other, or tables or office furniture or pictures or like, no, none of that. Your focus needs to be on instruction. If your playground's not good enough, they should go to the district and negotiate with them, not with you. Don't get involved in capital ever.
Yeah, too much of a headache.
Can we
Nothing
refer
good's
them
gonna
to
come
the
out of that.
district? Can we
Pardon?
refer them to the
Yeah,
district?
just like
Okay.
community use of schools. You don't do contracts on those. You have somebody in your district that handles community use of schools. And if they want to do a contract with them, that's fine. But you don't say, well, I'll let y'all use our gym over the weekend to have church or whatever. You do not do facilities. They belong to the Board of Education. You're there.
Speaking
for
of which,
instruction.
we have had so many people come and use our gym for church on Sundays. So is that, and I don't know if that's been a school decision
Community
or,
use. It better not
so
be a
that's a
school.
district thing?
Well,
That's a district thing.
that's yeah, absolutely. There's a department that does that.
Okay.
Absolutely. Schools do not need to be involved ever in capital. We have folks in the central office who are involved with that. And free is not free. Gifts are not free. What was it? Somebody did something and they didn't realize that they were going to have to put another bathroom in the water, and the bathroom that they had to put into new improved ballpark cost more than the parents' improvements did. Putting another bathroom in to be ADA compliant or something, and water fountains, all them had to be changed out. There is no free lunch. I'm on a music jag tonight, as Meatloaf said. There ain't no Coupe de Ville hiding in the bottom of a Cracker Jack box, folks. There is no free money. There is no free lunch. Capital stuff costs you. And one of the things that parents don't like is when they donate something, it becomes property of the Board of Education, period, and they can do what they want to with it. And parents don't agree. Well, I want this and I want that done. That ain't the way it works. That would be no. So stay away from capital. I don't care. That there is no scenario that you can introduce to me that I would say, yeah, I believe that'd be okay. Stay away from capital, period.
And just kind of some key takeaways for tonight, and I'll be finished. Just remember, ensure your budget's aligned to school improvement. Have a team. Always be an auditor of your budget and your spending. Always view it through an auditor's lens. Collaborate with boosters and school organizations. Fundraise when necessary, no more than 2 times as a school fundraiser, and then communicate frequently. So, again, y'all, budgets can be, they can drive your school improvement, they can drive staff morale, but they can also destroy a school if it's not taken care of, or destroy a school's morale if it's not taken care of appropriately. So just keep that auditor mindset anytime you're spending money in your buildings, and just make sure it's always for the right reasons. So.
Great, thank you. All right, so let me share my screen. Under week 14, I have Dr. Sain's presentation. I have this SIOP. Again, my gift to you, you get one last template. We said we wouldn't give you another one, but I do at the end. So it's under week 14, Zoom session 14 is where you will find that. Also under that, I have the latest update to Title IX. And then I have a video from Gardner Webb that put it out. But, you've heard me say it 1,000 times, call the law, involve them. You are not qualified. And that's what the Title IX update says, is that you're not qualified to do that. That districts or colleges have to hire people, or you have to, like in CMS, we converted our security to police, and then hired a person to specifically do those investigations. Title IX says you're required to do that now. So you need to read you need to read the update, and then here's the video that goes with that. Now, the most substantive change to Title IX, folks, is that everybody is now a responsible person. If they collect a check at your place, I'm gonna stop my share. So again, you won't be distracted. Every adult that works in your building is now a responsible person. What is a responsible person? That means somebody that must report if somebody tells them something has happened. In the past, you had designees in each building who were the responsible person. And when something would happen, the teacher would say, well, I knew that. The student told me, why didn't you tell? Well, I didn't have to. I'm not getting involved in that. Everybody that draws a check in your building is now a responsible, whether it's the custodian, cafeteria lady, the bus driver, the teacher, the assistant principal, the dean of students, the principal. Everybody now is a responsible person. There's never any excuse not to report and get involved with your Title IX person and law enforcement, ever. Because every adult that gets a check is a responsible person now. Now, that begs the question, what about volunteers? I would make sure that the volunteers understood as well. Even though you're not an employee here, we are deputizing you as a responsible person as well. If a kid comes to you and says, somebody said this or did this to me, then you need to come and tell me. Now, back to verbal sexual harassment. I would not investigate that either. Because as soon as somebody says, yeah, he said this to this, and then he touched me or she touched me, or we made physical now all of a sudden we're in trouble. We were trying to keep this out of the news. We didn't want anybody to know. We were going to do our own little investigation. And now a crime has occurred. Now we got a sexual assault charge. Uh-oh. Boy, that makes law enforcement matter than a wet hen. I'll just tell you right now. So anytime you need to make sure you consult with your SRO, with your law enforcement, make sure, and you need to get to your Title IX person who is the reporting person. But every adult in your building is now a responsible person. So here's the last thing for the evening. Let's go back here. And hopefully we can bring all this together. And Dr. Sain started this out with this tonight. Here it is, folks. This is what we did this semester. We worked on the master schedule with the OMA. We worked on getting community involvement. Our last case study brought all of it together. And then the other piece that we concluded tonight is the school budget. These are the two cornerstones of the school improvement plan, which is what we do. The school improvement plan addresses instruction. If your master schedule or your budget or neither supports your school improvement plan, it won't happen. Nothing good is going to happen in your building. We've had you doing a lot of coming and going to and froing this semester. We've had you out doing activities, trying to get you to understand how school really works and how to operate a school. But in the end, both management functions, that master schedule, that community involvement, that's a piece of that and all that, and this school budget, they still have to support that school improvement plan, that triangle. Even as a manager, you can never forget that our job is to educate kids. What do they do at Jones Sausage? They make sausage. What do we do in schools? We teach kids. That's our core competency. That's what we do. I've had a good time this semester. I can tell you that. Y'all know that I just can't wait for Wednesday nights every week. This is the highlight of my week. Jackson Brown, one of my favorite artists, said the only time that seems too short is the time we get to play. This is the time that we get to play. And I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed it. Each of you, you've done such a tremendous job. Christina says she's learned a lot. Well, I hope you have. We always learn too. Now, I'll speak for Dr. Singh. He's been with me a while now. He'll be with me again this summer. We have a good time, folks. I'll just tell you, we have a great time doing this. This is truly the highlight of my week. I love being with y'all. I hope that you've learned something. I know that you have what it takes to do this job.
For sure.
I know that. And so, as always, I want to thank you for your time tonight and joining us when you did. And also, as always, thank you for choosing Gardner Webb. We will see you again soon. You got 2 weeks to get your work in. Work on it. Everybody have a good night. Again, Dr. Singh, our resident expert, thank you again for being with us this semester. You add so much value. You absolutely do. We appreciate it.
You guys are great. Hope to see you soon. If you need a reference, if you want to go to Lincoln County, let me know.
I'm calling
Let
you.
him know.
I'm
All right.
calling you.
All right, everybody.
Dr. Lamb,
Kelly.
Dr. Lamb, can I ask a
Eric?
question after?
Yes.
No, but you don't have to stay on. I just have a question about the cap and about a conversation